Today I sat down with Eytan Wiener, the now CEO of GETIDA. Formerly, he was the co-founder and COO of Quantum that he sold to a public company. In our episode together, we talk a lot about the challenges and the things that don't necessarily go wrong when you're trying to build a business. We talk a lot about failure, about the challenges that he faced when the business was acquired by a public company and what that actually means, getting in control of financials, what does it mean to be a profitable business, a whole range of topics and things that are very, very real. I hope, like every episode, you get value out of it. Welcome to Successful Scales, the show where I talk to world-class professionals on what it takes to scale successful businesses. I dive deep asking questions to people who are running unicorn businesses, to raising funds, to buying businesses, mergers and acquisitions, IP and patent law, what is to manage performance management. I mean, the list goes on. The idea really is, how do I create knowledge and learning for you guys listening in? And of course, myself, getting the floor with people who I, in many cases, would never dream to share a room with. Before we jump into the episode, I've got to give a special thank you to our sponsors. Firstly, over at Global Wide Advisors, a leading digital consumer products investment bank focused on optimizing the sales process. An incredible team, always happy to pick up the phone and educate you or anyone about the sales process and what you should really consider, and can obviously help take you to market or even acquire businesses. I ring them for just about everything these days. Us over at Multiply Me, we are the end-to-end executive search and HR function into the Philippines, helping find better talent and onboarding them effectively. And last but not least, Escala, our management consultancy focused on process improvement, where we help build better systems for your business. That's all the ads you're going to get from me, ladies and gentlemen. The rest is all about learning. I hope you really enjoy and get as much out of these sessions as I do, sitting face-to-face with some of the world-renowned leaders in their respective fields, asking them the tough questions that they're not often asked. Eytan, thank you very much, my friend, for jumping on an episode of Successful Scales.
Thanks for having me, Yoni. I'm really excited to be here.
Likewise, I'm really excited to be here, and I'm loving that my dog is already sitting here and barking in the background. So that's, that's just one of the things that you have to roll with. Now, now that I've got that out of the way, you and I spent a fair bit of time together actually last week, the week before now. It's all starting to blend into one with the travel that's been back at Prosper, which you were actually the godfather of. I'm going to give you that title, the godfather. But, gotten to know you relatively well. Excited to jump into this for the next, 30, 40 minutes. But for those who don't know you, would love you to explain better than I can your background, because it's an interesting one.
Sure. Yeah, it was nice to get to meet you. I saw a lot of your name popping up more and more. And I was like, who is this guy? And then I finally met you and I see why. So, and I think I told you that. So it's
all
fun.
Bad things.
A little surreal the week of the travel, and hopefully we'll continue as discussed. But yeah, a little bit about me. I got into the e-commerce Amazon space in 2008 or 9, kind of way before a lot of these companies and sellers and brands that were at the show were in the space. And it was much easier then to kind of penetrate. So I had a B2B kind of wireless type business. And then we kind of accidentally pivoted online with eBay and website sales. And then we kind of discovered Amazon in 2010. And that was along with James Thompson, your buddy, who I know you had on the podcast and that you like. And he was my rep at Amazon, even though he really wasn't. He was just a nice guy who was doing everything at once when they didn't have any seller support. And he's like, do this, do that. And we just kind of followed his lead, and we grew from almost nothing to 30 or million in sales in 18 months. So we leveraged the existing product we had with exclusivity or pricing that we were selling online and Magento and eBay, and then once we hit Amazon, it was addictive. So we were doing everything. So we were doing arbitrage, we were doing sourcing, we were doing refurbish, really first to market, new countries, everything, which led to the growth. We didn't really make any money, which is probably important for your your podcast and listeners and clients, but we learned a lot. And then we kind of just grew up, maybe let's say 2016, 17. I mean, we were growing up, but um, I have my partner, John Goldman, was more um, involved on like, I guess, the branding and like vision side. I was more operational and biz dev and networking side. So we realized that if we just went out of business, like no one would care. Similar to many of the resellers now that don't exist, because specifically with the Amazon market, as you know, like 70+% is private label, your own brand. But that wasn't even like a thing so much then. So to sum it up, we kind of got rid of all the non-value projects, and John came up with this brand Blue Coil that was like a private label brand, which we made overseas, and it was a tech accessory solution. So we sold it as a standalone, but the real magic was that we bundled it with products. So I like to give this example since we're on a podcast. You know, you have a podcasting mic that you have over there. It's really cool. Maybe it's prosumer, but it's not so native to everybody to know how to use it. And Amazon's wonderful, but the pages are kind of messy and the cross sell is kind of difficult. So if you could buy that with a pop filter and the software and a case, you probably would. And if I could offer that to you for the same price or $1 more, you'd probably buy it. It also gives us exclusivity. So we have the Blue Coil bundle, podcasting professional, blah, blah, blah. So we have the listing. There's no competitors because no one else has our trademark or branded product. Maybe we'll charge a few dollars more, but what's most important is it's not gray and that the brand approves this. They like it, right? Because the brand doesn't have time to make accessories and they rather us add value than any other reseller just doing me too and competing with 20 sellers, which is kind of stupid or a race to the bottom. So that's what we did. And then over time, we built almost, 60% of our sales were bundle related. So it was a solution in different categories. That was just one, but podcasting, video, streaming, storage, you name it. And then since we already made the products, we were able to sell them. So even a charger or a cable that cost us $1, we were able to sell it like full markup because of Amazon. This is like the beginning of this phase, like the brand became popular. So obviously we had a website, we had other channels. So that became like the lion's share of the sales. Additionally, we had like 20 or 30 exclusive brands that were international that we would import, and we were like the exclusive seller for. And that led to like a higher margin and more valuable business that we eventually sold to a public company in the beginning of 2020. Before it was like such a normal thing to sell an Amazon business. It was actually very not normal and hard because they had all this inventory. So that's a whole other story. And then, as I mentioned, I was also involved in, Prosper, which is a great show these days. We started it when there was no other shows and no other like communities, and now it's become like a beast. So that was cool, made some money selling it, but really just got to meet all these great people like you, and that's very, I'm very, blessed to have been involved. So obviously I'm up to new things now, which we'll talk about, but that's like I guess 4 minutes about myself.
And can I just say, it's so humble. Like you just breeze through so many things that let's just take a step back. So, I mean,
you told me to be brief. I could do that like the 20-hour version, but I just went like straight for the highlights.
I mean, more so just the fact, like, just casually, built, sold, prosper, no big deal. Like the whole reason why I had the opportunity of actually meeting you in person, like you said, was because you had the vision to create something like Prosper, which, by all accounts is the premier conference that goes on where it's about education, where it's about, connection, where it's about actually adding true value to the community. And I find it really interesting, just, as you saw me jotting down all the different notes here, like there is definitely like real trends as to what it seems to me in how you approach, how do you actually add value or simplify or create opportunities for people, and sort of giving them the leg up the way you were bundling products and everything in between. So I love that you said it so humbly, but I'm gonna sit here formally and appreciate the fact that you created it and that so many of us benefit.
And to add to the humility without saying that I'm humble is that it's all about, and based on what you do, it's really not me at all. It's team and chemistry and people. So James, for example, was the guy who started Prosper. I didn't start it. I helped him. I invested. I did whatever I could. I got a lot of sellers to come when they laughed at us and didn't think it was legit. And I consulted, but I wasn't like day to day. He was. So I was lucky to be involved, and I think I helped. So, and with my business as well, my partners, my other partners, like, it's always a team. That's why, I know you work on helping people get teams and structure. You could add the vision, but I wouldn't be where I was without all these people and processes and a lot of hard work. But yeah, no, I appreciate you saying that, regardless.
Yeah. To echo your sentiment, I feel the same way. People are like, it's amazing what you've created and what you've done. And, the reality is you're only able to create anything worth creating with the people around you and the support that you have and everyone playing their parts. You're only as strong as your weakest link. I could sit here and go back and forth with you with
Yeah, it's
cliches
all
and
about no,
but
no, it's true. I mean, I know you focus on that and scale, and I'm trying to do that now for this company, like high growth, like really, get the right. It's all about the people. You just find that one good person or partner, and it's like a game changer. It's really hard to do. People don't really value that, or a typical entrepreneur, like, I could do it on my own, or I don't want to delegate, but like it doesn't work. And it's all about people, team.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually can't believe it took me so long, but I read a book called Who? The A Method of Hiring, and just an incredible blueprint of how you actually find, attract, and sell the opportunity to the best talent on the planet. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what your reading schedules look like, or if you've read that book, but I highly
I don't.
recommend it.
I wish I had time. I mean, I do have time, I guess. I have 4 kids and I work in a bunch of things, but I don't really read. Maybe that's bad. I also don't listen to podcasts, not to deter your audience. I mean, I love speaking, and I would probably value the learning. I'm just like doing so many things at once. I don't know. Maybe I should read more and dedicate time for it. But because always people are like, I read this book and I read that book, and I feel like I'm missing out on like these like secret things, like a lot of what you just said and what I explained, like I learned on the job, which is I guess the best learning. But maybe if I read a book, I know this hack or that. I'm sure you have some. So I think I have to find time to read more.
It definitely, like, for me, I'm someone who I probably won't absorb, let's say, at the same level as my co-founder Lippy and be able to turn it into something like very, very material. But I feel like reading so many books, and I actually listen to a lot of audiobooks. If I'm honest, I take the dog for a walk for, a couple of hours in the morning. I get up super early, and, in a week I can crush a book, maybe even 2, depending on sort of
Yeah.
my schedule here. But everything starts to sort of meld together, and you start to, for me, understand, like, and I read mostly books around, commerce and, leadership and management and structures
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
systems and all these things. Everything sort of blends into one. And I don't feel like I'm reading these like groundbreaking new topics anymore. I'm just taking little bits and pieces and then taking that one little bit of
Yeah.
application. And
Maybe send me your like maybe send me your like your top 10 list and I'll start there.
so I
One at
have
a
it.
time.
I have it already saved on my
Okay.
email templates, so I will send it to you after this
Okay.
call.
Okay.
Absolutely. I need to update it. There's a couple more that need
Okay.
to be included. Good to Great is one that's now in
So I
my.
actually read that book. For some reason, that was like a thing in our old company. Like, let's read Good to Great. Let's buy like all the entrepreneurial books. Like, let's do everything at once. And we're gonna get a library. So like, we bought that, and like we told everyone to read it because it's very interesting. And people always quote it. I'm like, yeah, I read that like 9 years ago. I don't even remember the principles. I think I do a bit. Um, that's the hedgehog principle.
Yep,
Is
that's
that
one of
Good to
them.
Great?
Yep, that's
So
what Walgreens did.
yeah, yeah. So you can't do. I'm sure we'll get to it, but you can only do so much. Like I said, you can only do so much at once. You can't do a million things at once. Jack of all trades, master of none. I see that like so much today with people I speak to, and even myself, to just focus on like what you're doing. So it
Mm.
sounds like I have done a bunch of things, and one of my weaknesses was just trying to do even more. I mean, there's so many things I failed at that people, right? So you said, oh, Eytan, so great, you found the show and you're awesome, and then like I think it's important that entrepreneurs talk about all the things they fail at every day, and it's not articulated at all. I mean, it is, but very few people have that angle,
Not
and it's
enough.
like fake. Yeah, it's like a little fake because it demoralizes followers. Like, oh, this guy's amazing. Like Mark Cuban, like he's a billionaire. Like he definitely failed many times. He actually does talk about it, but most people don't. In
I,
a kind of a haughty slash self-conscious way, but it's so important because then if you don't talk about it, everyone thinks that they're failures because they have cash flow problems. Like that's normal, right?
Yep,
But
totally. I mean,
that's one of my things as well.
I've literally got a whole, well, it's not a segment, but with this podcast specifically, today at our town hall meeting where we speak, where I sit and speak to the whole company with my COO and my co-founder, and we had nearly 100 people on the call that could get on it today. We show my video editor, he'll make blooper reels of all the fuck ups that happen on the podcast.
Yeah.
Like when I get off this podcast with you, I'm going to record the intro of like what we talked about and what happened. And, for that like 30-second minute soundbite, I might take like 6 or 7 takes and a million things are going to happen in between that. And I send it over to him. So now he's just like, he has fun with it. And I think it's so important to go through that process and have that humility, because it's ridiculous to think that, all these things that you watch and follow along with, that they just happened as overnight successes. Like the hours that you sat and you slugged and you failed and you went down a new avenue, new direction, it didn't yield anything. But I think that like when you break it all down, it's that consistency and that commitment and that willingness to go again. Those are the things that are actually going to set you apart, not getting it right 100% of the time.
Yeah, and you actually need that. Like you need to fail, because if you don't fail, you don't develop the thick skin or resiliency. You'll never be able to handle the bigger stakes. So I'm trying to get thicker. I have much thicker skin than I used to now. Like if you tell me something, quasi traumatic on a business level, like I'm able to like just sit back. But I used to like freak out, and I mean I still do in some ways. Again, far from perfect, but over time you learn to like roll with it. So if you don't have those experiences, you just can't move on because you don't know how to deal with, oh, your investor pulled back the money, or this happened, or your account got suspended, all the things that you speak about.
Yeah.
After it happens many times, you're able to be a little cool about it. If not, then like people just wouldn't be successful. So that's something that's just not articulated.
Well, you probably shouldn't be in business if every little thing is gonna, as in you shouldn't be a business owner. Definitely not. If every little thing's gonna send you back to where you once were. It's like you build like anything, you just build the tolerance. Like, okay, that was a fuck up of a magnitude I could never have imagined in my wildest dreams 6 months ago. Today, that's like, oh, okay, whatever. Like moving on. Like when you start a business, oh my God, we lost one of our 5 clients. Now you got 150, 1,000, 10,000 clients. It's like, okay, well, we're going to be okay. We're going to endure. Like, let's find out how we can fix it.
Yeah. I don't enjoy the stress of like dealing with issues or, suspend whatever could happen in a business. But I couldn't function as like an employee of someone, like just clocking in. I mean, I've never done it. Actually, that's not true. I did it for like a year or so in the beginning of my career. But yeah, it's just like a totally different like DNA. But yeah, it's you need to fail a lot. And like, I think people should tell people that instead of just saying like, oh, here's what to do and you'll make $1 billion. Especially in this Amazon space, like, oh, private label, like it's so hard to make a brand. Oh, I sold my brand for 6x. Like people don't even think how hard that is. It's just like kind of normal to say, oh yeah, I sold my brand. Like it's really, really, really hard. And even the Thracios and all these guys who are so hot, they only buy like one out of whatever 50 brands that they look at. So you don't speak to the 49 like quote unquote losers. You just speak to the one cool dude. No one understands that. Unfortunately.
Well, I think that comes back. I think that comes back to your point. Not enough people are talking about the things that didn't go to plan. They're just simply saying, well, this is my win. I had my exit. Like, no one's sitting there saying, hey, Eytan, I shopped my business around for the last 18 months. It's been on the decline month on month. I cannot even give it away now. Like no one's sitting there and turning around and really talking about those things. And I think it's a shame. I think that it's something that others can learn from, if you have the humility I think if you know in yourself as well, like I would also look at myself as like a different entrepreneur. I don't like, as much as I love the brands and the businesses that I'm creating, I am not them and they are not me. So if someone took away, multiply me in a scala tomorrow, I'm not losing my identity in whatever's going on there. Like that is it's a vehicle, an opportunity to create opportunities for lots of people. We employ, about 150 people. And for me, that would be the devastation, is that, well, shit, what actually
Yeah.
happens to everyone's livelihood attached to it? Not, the sort of the ego or the brown builder, like my baby. You've got to sort of rationalize, what are you actually trying to achieve and what's the desired
Yep.
outcome, not
Yeah.
hold on to every little thing.
Yeah, I had did another podcast with this guy called, what's his name? John Warlow. It's like
No.
I didn't know it was so popular podcast. I got all these, like my mom and all these people like, oh, I listened to your podcast. They're so great. I was like, what? I didn't know people listen to that. Not just my mom, a lot of people. But
What's the
he
podcast called?
went. It's called. His name is John Warlow. Something wealth something. He talks about exits. Like that's his thing.
Okay.
I can Google it out, but I'm not going to. But he got very into like the psychological, emotional side of like selling a company. My point to him was like, it's great to sell. It's like amazing. I'm so happy and fortunate. And it was very hard to do before and after. But like, I didn't really feel so like, oh my God, like I did it, like I'm amazing, or, I've
What was
reached
that
the
feeling
secret
like?
of life. Yeah. So as I said to him, it was I didn't even really have a chance to enjoy it because I went right into like this whole earn-out stressful period with a public company, which was very, very hard for me because it was totally different. Like we said, entrepreneur versus like corporate. But also I never had the chance to like relish in it or appreciate it. And I was always worried about like what the numbers are going to be. And yeah, money is very important in life, but it definitely doesn't buy happiness. And like I don't know if like a midlife crisis, but I started to like think like, okay, like like you said, what's the point of what I do? And if it was gone, what would that mean? So I used to help brands or I help sellers and prosper. Like that's fun, money aside. And like even what we're doing now, GETIDA, we're helping sellers, we're helping them save money. We're being strategic, and like I enjoy helping and sharing. But I actually like what I do now because I like helping sellers. And as I told you, I used to use this service, and I actually built an initial tool that did reimbursements, and now I'm helping people do it, and it helps your bottom line. But my point is that I spoke to this guy that like you said, if it all goes away, so like what happens? What's the point? It's not just about the failures and the successes. It's like what you're doing, and like the full picture. So yeah, you could watch the podcast. It was actually pretty cool. But he started hitting
I'm
me with
definitely
like
gonna
all
look
these
it up.
psychological questions, and like how did it feel, and how to go with your partner, and like he went like really deep, and I was like, okay, this is good, because his whole point was the same. Like everyone hears about the glory, they don't hear about all the deals that don't go through, and when you get screwed, and when this doesn't work. So I was trying to be a little confidential, obviously, but just to tell him like how it really works, and it was really I got a lot of good feedback, I should say, but
I think people,
yeah, it was interesting.
I think people really appreciate that. Like I've spoken on a few podcasts about what happened in the Amazon business that I scaled from 2 to 5 million in 12 months. It was acquired by Thrasio, but I didn't see a dollar from that exit. I was an equity owner. One of the original founders was super unethical. And I walked into the office and I just said, listen, I don't care if you give me 100% of the business, I'll never work another day in my life with you. And I walked and I gave all of it up. And that was sort of the day that signaled to them, there's no more growth here. And that was also the day that they started to go down much more heavily. We were already speaking to an investment bank at the time, and, the wheels were already turning, but that was sort of the be all. They fired the team. I took my team. I started building Multiply Me in a Scala. But, that lesson, going through that lesson of like trying to go through the contracts and the relationship and building that over such a long period of time to yield no financial return. Like, yeah, that hurts, but am I a million times happier today than I was
Yeah.
then? Absolutely. Do I feel like
So
I'm actually having meaning and impact? It's a different
yeah.
world for me now.
So no, I know we spoke about that, but just to touch on that, so I understand. They sold and you didn't see anything of it, and that's when you left, after or before?
Before. So when I walked in and said I'm out, like, I'm
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to go into the details of how
Yeah. No, I'm just trying to understand. Yeah.
not so clean it was, but effectively I was a 20% owner. The business
Yeah.
sold for, I mean, it was 2.5 times back then, but
Yeah.
now that
Yeah.
probably would have been a whole lot more. And Yeah, I saw none of it. I walked away. I also
Yeah,
took a massive pay cut as well. Like I had a
yeah.
successful agency before that to work with them for, the 12 months that
I
I
thought
was
you were
working with
saying,
them.
I mean, that's traumatic, and I'm sorry. I thought you were saying like even kind of maybe worse, where like they told you have it, and they're like sorry. But I understand, like you go to them and say, hey, like I'm kicking butt, like I need equity, and they're like no, and you're like, okay, you don't really value me, but clearly I'm the main producer. That's a really horrible feeling. I
They
need I
they
need
gave me the
to
equity.
be involved.
They gave me the equity.
Yeah,
I had 20%,
yeah,
and yeah, I didn't realize that. I mean, I could have gone down the whole court battle and that whole
yeah, yeah,
thing,
yeah, yeah.
but
I
it
get it.
wasn't.
Yeah,
What it would have meant for me is I would have had to stuck around for the nearly year until that whole thing actually um, tipped.
yeah.
And I just, for
It's
my
yeah, it's
my
not worth it.
emotional, yeah, for my emotional stability and sanity, it just
Yeah.
wasn't worth it.
I'm sorry. I had a sim. I mean, I've seen that many times, and that's why agreements are important, and chemistry, like we said, is important because it's not just about money. But even in my scenario, like I didn't really do so well working for another company, even though there's like money, upside on the line. I just need to kind of be independent or like visionary and not like fall into a corporate structure because I don't think I could do that. I mean, I did that like very hardcore, and it wasn't for me. Let's just say. But to your point, I have a lot of regrets or like, hey, I should have gone with this banker. I should have done this, should have done that. And you can't change time. You just have to learn. So now I'm okay. Now I'm running another company. Now I know what I did wrong. So let me take all those things and then try to grow this company better, quicker, faster, sell it, whatever the thing is, and just learn from that. From the prospect experience, from the quantum, and hopefully I could learn. And maybe that lesson, for you as well, is worth more, much more on the happiness level and a dollar amount than you ever would have made. So you could argue it
Guaranteed.
was good. It was good that they were jerks because they helped you. It's very hard to see that. I know when
I
you're
can say I can
when they
say
tell
I
you.
it's
Yeah,
clear as day to me. Like
but
when I
that's
look.
because you've done all these things since. Most people are not as, let's say, talented or motivated. But yeah, that's the way to do it. Like you said, fail, get screwed, learn, and then just like you know show them all that you could do it better.
For sure. I mean, when I look back at that experience, I still fell into, even though I was a partner in the business and I had equity and all those things, I was still kept in a box. I still couldn't actually realize my full potential because I was held accountable to a specific function in the business. I was handling everything that was marketing and Amazon and building the systems and the processes. And, I couldn't drive the vision as much as I would have liked to. I was caged, and it was the
Yeah,
same situation. So you talked about you've never worked for someone. I spent 10 years of my career working for other people, working for agencies, and
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, and I learned a lot. And I think that an important thing for people listening, the whole entrepreneurial life and being the owner and the boss and all that stuff. Like, yeah, it sounds really sexy on paper, but at the end of the day, there's a lot of stress attached to it. And, when
yeah,
I was 27 years old, 28 years old, making six figures, that was pretty sweet.
yeah,
I could leave most of my work at the office. I punched in, punched out. Like that's a sweet gig.
yeah.
I think like one of the important things for people to also think about is like the grass isn't always greener. And there's definitely days where I'd be like, shit, I'd probably be making some pretty silly money right now if I was working for someone else. And
Yeah,
that would be like, there's none of this weekend work or being on a
yeah,
podcast at 10 to 10, 20 to 10 at
yeah.
night on a whatever night of the week this is,
But do
but
you still say that to yourself, or you're past that phase?
I love every single day.
Right. So that's
Yeah,
priceless, right? To enjoy what you do, I think is more valuable than obviously you need money and it's important, but it's really it's easier said than it depends on the person that I understand. But I see so many people who like hate what they do or like they just don't like their job. And that's totally like normal. But they don't, I guess we're fortunate, they don't know that there's something where you could actually determine your destiny because they're never going to take the jump because they already have a family and kids and they can't. So they're kind of like
stuck.
locked. I was fortunate. I actually went to dental school, which I didn't tell you about. I was like on the track to be a dentist or an oral surgeon, whatever. And I just hated it. And I was like lucky, I think, that I just went to a school. It was like kind of miserable. And I was like, you know what? I just can't do this. And I dropped out. And that was very, I guess, ballsy and my parents and my wife supported me, but I was lucky to find it. I didn't even know what business was. Like I didn't know anything, and I just learned it the hard way. But most of my friends are amazing, but they have, they're doctors and dentists and all that. And that's great, and they're happy. I doubt I would be happy just because again, I wouldn't have known what I wouldn't have known. Like I don't know, but thank God I had that situation, so I was able to realize my potential, and I'm very thankful. And it was super brutal. Like I was super depressed. Like what am I gonna do? I'm a failure, and I figured it out in some regard. So that was like, that's the story of my life, I guess.
Well, I mean, that's like, another cliche, when you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. And so sort of finding that pathway into the things that energize you and excite you, like I have too, as well. I definitely enjoyed what I used to do in digital marketing. It was great, and I was privy and had a lot of great experiences, and it's led me on the path to today. And I'm happy that I learned on someone else's dollar. I'm happy that I made all the fuck ups on, in someone else's company, so that I'm not going to make, the mistakes that hopefully, I make mistakes every other day, but hopefully they're not going to be as big as they would have been, if I'd been 22 when I started the company.
Yeah. I heard this I don't know if this is new. I'm sure you may have heard this. It's like this way of reasoning where like, people get like imposter syndrome and like doubt or anxiety. It's like, and I thought about this, it's like, think about like the worst possible thing that could happen, right? Like you just said, you have this business and then like, I don't know, your partner runs away. Like you already have all these great things. So like you could worry, again, a lot of it's irrational, but you could worry all day about cash flow and this and that. But like worst case, like you probably have the talent and the skill to be successful. So like when I tell people that, sometimes they're like, I mean, even myself, it changes your perspective. Like you get so caught up in stupid issues or maybe lawsuits or whatever, but you're like, at the end of the day, like you said, like what's the end game? Like so what? Like you said,
I played this
really,
game.
It's not so bad, right? Because Yoni, right? You could probably do the same thing you're doing or better, even if this whole thing implodes or someone runs away with it. And that is really priceless, because that means you don't really have to worry. Obviously, you have to still work. So like, I try to play the game. It's a little hard, but
well, how about this one? Try this one on for size. So
yeah, you've heard of this concept, right? This
is
like a thing, like
doomsday
scenario. It's not so bad. You have a family and whatever, a wife or kids, whatever it is. Like, thank God, like it's okay.
So you've had all these enormous successes over the course of your career. Right now, you've just invested and become part of a great company in GETIDA as the CEO, and it's amazing what you guys are doing as well. I always say the easiest solution in history ever to sell. How can you have trouble selling something where you're not paying a cent and they're getting you money back for stranded, for all the reimbursements that, are gonna happen inside of Amazon. It's pretty amazing. But your worst nightmare is someone else's absolute dream. You could literally implode, and your worst nightmare would be going to work for someone and getting a very cushy salary doing whatever it is you want to do. And that's literally someone's dream job. And that would likely be your worst nightmare. So I always tell Lippy as well, just realize that doesn't matter even whatever happened. Like you have an insurance policy. And although it doesn't feel like a good one for you, it's a pretty sweet deal.
Yeah. That actually adds more color to it. Cause then I'm like, okay, I'll play it on myself. So let's say, whatever money I have, whatever it's gone, and this, and whatever happens, like, okay, I can just always work for somebody in the space or consult, which I like. But yeah, I really wouldn't want to do that. But yeah, no, that's true. And yeah, it kind of makes things less intense when you think about that. It's hard to do because like you usually get caught up in the moment. But I've been hearing that a lot lately. I don't know if it's like in a book or something that you read. Like, think of the worst case.
Not in any of the ones I've read recently, but you actually touched on something right at the start, and it's been on the top of my mind to talk to you about it, because while we're on what I think is one of the most important topics, is talking about the things that don't go well. That it's funny, I had Steve Simonson on the podcast a while ago, and we were talking about like a lot of his major things that went wrong, and massive deals that didn't go to play and all this stuff. But you talked about the fact that for the longest time, and I don't know how many years it was, you guys weren't profitable. Is that right? How was that at Quantum?
Let me be more clear. Not only were we not profitable, but I had no idea how much money we were making. I had no idea anything about finance. Like I was just like totally raw. Like, oh, we'll sell this. There's some money in the bank. Okay, we'll make a salary. Until we got more sophisticated, like to look at the bottom line, and I got a better accountant and whatever, understood numbers and multiples. Like I was totally, yeah, take a couple dollars to live. Everything's in the business, everything's in the inventory. It wasn't such a lucrative, sexy thing. Um, we probably made a couple bucks, but you know, there was no oversight. But like I learned the hard way a lot about finance because to streamline a company, to sell it, and to understand all the numbers. And as you know, most Amazon sellers still don't know how much money they're making, even the most sophisticated. So that makes it harder because Amazon's kind of a black box in many ways. People are working on that, but I've spoken to 9-figure sellers that are clients that they still have no idea. Because when I tried to show them the reimbursement impact, they don't understand like where I'm even starting because they don't understand the fees. But to answer your question, yeah, we made a couple bucks, or like we paid ourselves like a modest amount, but it wasn't anything like significant. And then when we got more sophisticated, it still was like fine. Like I guess it covers my cost, hopefully. But the real money was in the sale because you make this multiple potentially of what's there versus having all the cash flow issues and trying to get loans and whatnot, which is hard for sales. Again, this whole concept changed over the last year or two because of all these aggregators. But when I sold the company, I was like, that wasn't a normal thing. So only the last 3-4 years were we like profitable or like considerably profitable. And only in the last few years did I really understand it. And even now I'm learning more about it because when I had to like merge into a corporate finance department, I had to become like a controller, see like everything. Like we're very small and they were like a multi-billion-dollar company. So even though it was brutal, I learned the hard way all these finance things that are invaluable. So like that's important. Now I understand, P&Ls pretty well.
So
But yeah,
so I think that's like, to get to the root of it. So many people are focused on, all the different aspects that are about like growth and revenue and what my numbers are. And, I think that having a vision or understanding, I don't even know if exit was sort of the desired outcome or intent, but I think that having that game plan and understanding, right now, like we're not profitable. We'll be profitable maybe next year. We're still a young company. We keep reinvesting and we're building technology. And, there's a million other initiatives that we're trying to do because we're just trying to figure out like, okay, what is our product market fit? How far can we push the envelope? Like, where does this reality go to? But I think that I think the first things first, understanding like what is the desired outcome? What are we actually working backwards from or to in order to achieve it, it is pretty key. So a lot of Amazon sellers, I often say, I would say the thing I see posted most is like, how long does it take for you to become profitable on Amazon? Or how long till you can pay yourself a wage, or all these questions, which are ridiculous in themselves because what's your product? How have you actually structured it? How much money was invested? What is the whole DNA of the business in itself? But I think for people listening in as well, designing your life is key. Don't just spend 10 years paying yourself $1 and living, in a little shoebox, and then, wasting your life away only to have an exit when you're 50, 60, whatever it is. Like, I think that having life design and understanding like, what do I need at specific incremental periods, and what are the life events? Am I going to buy a house? Am I going to whatever that looks like? Actually, having a bit of foresight can rapidly shift the game in terms of what
yeah.
your life
I
looks
think
like.
my example is interesting because again, selling an Amazon brand or company, and again, we weren't an agency became more popular, like a recurring revenue, almost like a SaaS model. But selling a brand, or we were a reseller, again, a strategic reseller or a value add reseller. We had some exclusive, some private label, but essentially like a really glorified reseller with creative strategies. That was the value. But we had to become that first of all, and hopefully become profitable. And then to your point, like realize, okay, we could sell or we could continue. Maybe we'll make some money. But as I was growing it, like I always thought it was like a joke. Like people are like, oh, you sell on Amazon, like like you're a loser, like not a loser, but just like who does that? Like you're like good luck. And now you're reading like the Wall Street Journal, the front page, like oh, this brand sold for like 10x, and they made like 50. So people learn about what I used to do by reading like all these articles about these aggregators, which is so interesting to me because I was like, yeah, of course I know what that is. Like, oh, have you heard of this company, Thrasio? I was like, actually, they wanted to come to Prosper in like 2017, and James and I like spoke to them. We thought it was like a Ponzi scheme because like seriously, you're gonna buy FBA brands? Like that's not a thing. Again, I still question some of the longevity of the model, but obviously it's here to stay. So my point is, it wasn't even a thing to sell. So I didn't even think what I was doing was valuable. I was just like figuring out as I went along. And now, kind of after I sold, ironically, it became hugely valuable. So I guess I played the best I could have. But you're right that it's important that whatever you're doing, which I really didn't do until like the last few years, like what's the point? Like I told you, what's the point of being a reseller or whatever you call it when tomorrow all your brands could leave? So you're not really worth anything as a company. Maybe you're happy what you do or you have enough to live, that's fine. But it could also go away. All these guys who do arbitrage and flip stuff online, it's really cute and they make a buck, but then they get suspended. So like, what's the point of putting your energy into something that's short term? I'm like really against that. I mean, I respect people who do it in a way, but there's no long-term value whatsoever.
It's kind of like day trading in a way.
It's a little more risky than day trading because the whole game with a lot of the arbitrage stuff, you're not really allowed to sell this stuff or you can get sued. So with day trading, you probably will lose your shirt, but you won't get sued by Apple for selling products. So like these guys are putting their like family and lives sometimes on the line. I'm not like trying to be like nasty, but I say it in a positive way. Like you're so smart, you come up with the best deal in the game. Why not apply that to making your own brand or being a whatever you call it?
Because it's hard.
Or doing software.
Because it's harder. I think people can
Yes.
take that path of least resistance, and to get into those aspects, it's like, well, why do people go down all these black hat tactics on Amazon and buy reviews and go down this whole process of beefing up their brand, etc. It's like, well, it's the path of least resistance, and if someone's going to figure it out, they're going to try and make a quick buck. But to me, I mean, from what I do know of you and from even the conversation we're having today, it's very much about putting in the work day in, day out, working toward, like even the way you reference, like having partners rather than going it alone. And, it's about the sum is greater than the parts, and actually investing in the people and the team and the vision and the day in, day out. I mean, it's always about the long-term play, whether you've intentionally planned it out to have an exit or whatever it is, like it's always going to come back to you. And I mean, even, being involved in a show like Prosper as well, you could never have known, when you started it, that it would look like what it did in 2021, the first event back after the world's being shut down for nearly 2 years. It's about the input and the value creation that yields the ROI, and that's not just monetary.
Yeah, it's very well said. I said on this I say this sometimes, but like the harder you work, the luckier you get, right? Because you touch so many things, and then I'll be like, oh, well, you don't just like sell a company, or you don't just like come into great opportunities. It's because you, like you said, whether you failed or you had partners, or you realize that these shortcuts don't work. Because I've tried the shortcuts, and many have, but my point with those kind of sellers and those kind of models are like, a lot of these guys are so smart and they're so savvy, and like their hacks are so brilliant. So I just look at the person like, why don't you just use that hack to like do it the right way? Meaning like use the same brain power and like come up with a new idea instead of gaming what's there. Like you'll be very well off for it. Some of them understand, most don't think like that. Because like you said, it's hard or it's foreign. But the ones who actually do it, and I've seen, like they do amazing stuff because they're super bright. So
I would say when I typically look at a lot of the most successful people, there tends to be maybe not most, but a good number of very select or successful people I'm a big believer about the gift of giving without the expectation of reciprocation. How can I have a
Yeah.
positive impact? And, if you wanted to get like, to the next level for me, like all this stuff around commerce, like it's a means to an end in a capitalist society. But my goals in life are a lot more altruistic than anything that I'm, physically doing on a day-to-day today. I'm very grateful that I get to help create, 150 job opportunities, and that supports 150 potential families, and that's like the closest thing to getting me to, I would say, ultimately where I want to go. But when I look at guys like you and James Thompson, when I look at a lot of the people who, like I told you, when I spoke to James for the first time, he literally, busy guy, he went out of his way and introduced me to 6 people straight after we got off the phone. I mean,
Yeah.
who does that? Who does that the first time?
I tried to emulate his ways. It's hard with time in the day, but yeah, he works like around the clock, and he doesn't really need to, but he just wants to help. And again, most of my success is really him, because if he wasn't in my life, I wouldn't have had the Prosper angle or some of the Amazon success. So yeah, he's one of my role models or brothers or whatever you call it, from another mother, whatever.
Yep.
And yeah, it's true. I really like to help people, whether it's like find jobs or give them guidance. And I try to speak to whoever. Sometimes random people call me, and like I always try. Sometimes it's let a really cool thing. Sometimes like it's a waste of time, but it's not really a waste. I'm helping them, or I'm trying to help them. And yeah, it's like giving back because it feels good, and because like what's the point of life, as discussed, just to help and add value. But to your point of not expecting it, usually it comes back, because if you help and you add value, whether it's your intention or not, people appreciate it, or they'll return the favor, or they'll realize, there's someone I know who, like, you may know him, but he just does like free advising, consulting, whatnot. And he never asks for anything. But usually the companies will give him like options or stock and whatnot, because they just realize the value. So when they come to you, that's like the best, because you don't have to sell yourself. You don't have to, you just help. And then it's a very long game, and he did it like really long. Usually it comes back. And James is a good example where he just helps billions of people, and that leads to opportunities for him. So I'm of the same mindset.
Yeah, likewise. And, I think for me, we sat and we were supposed to be at that MDS event. We ended up sitting and chatting for like an hour doing the opposite thing that we're supposed to be doing. But we just, we were really vibing, and we just really got along.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was,
Yeah, I'm sorry if I took you away from the crowd over there.
not at all, not at all. Honestly, that was some of the most valuable time that I spent. Honestly, like it's about
Good.
meeting. It's about meeting real people. It's
The
about
waiting for the bathroom line is always strategic,
yeah.
because everyone has to come there.
I'm gonna take that one from you, and that'll just be I'll be that creepy guy
Yeah, yeah.
standing in the bathroom line, handing out paper
No,
towels.
at the next event, just like wait. Yeah, you just wait there, and everyone comes there. Yeah, no, it's cool. I told you, I that was a good conversation. I had a lot of conversations, so that was cool. Yeah, you never know.
Well, I know we're coming to the top of the hour here, and while we're on the topic of Prosper, any key takeaways that you took? You've seen obviously every single year what the landscapes look like. For me, this was my first. Unfortunately, I wish I'd gotten to more earlier, but here we are now. What was the vibe for you? What was the key takeaways that you saw?
Yeah. Well, as I told you then and now, like again, it was like the first show was like a few hundred sellers, 20, 30 vendors. There was no Amazon advertising then. The industry was like really primitive compared to now, only 5 or 6 years later. So just to see the sheer amount of people and the nature of people, meaning every person, not every person, but a lot of people that I met, let's say in our booth, that I was like pitching or trying to sell or explain what we do and add value. Like they were all like multi-million or larger sellers, or they were aggregators, or they were brands. Like we just met this like really world famous brand that myself and Yoni spoke to this morning. And I was like blown away. They really want to understand and know what we do. Like one of the like top brands you could think of, and like it's a cool conversation, like how we could help all the resellers save money, and it was like so interesting. But guys like that, like heads of brands, CMOs, all these investors and bankers, like that wasn't a thing. So that was clearly what took the show, like all these aggregators and all the money into the industry. And you didn't have, I guess, unfortunately, you didn't have some of the newbies or the newer dudes. But that's because I think, as we spoke, like there's all these groups now, right? There's MDS and Eytan, and I don't even know all of them.
Seller
And they have all this
systems and
sell. Yeah, I can name a bunch of. They all try to help people sell, like Brandon Young. Yeah, all these things. I actually saw part of Brandon Young's presentation, which I was like really impressed by. Like schools, like there used to be a lot of snake oil, and now there's like a lot of legit people trying to help and add value. Again, it's still hard to sell. As we said, most things are hard. But it's such a vibrant community, and some people just came in for these parties that they didn't even go to the show. And like that's crazy to me because we never even had like a show. Like it was like a joke. Like it was not a joke. It was so small. Now there's like probably 20 parties just related to the show. That means like something's going on, and it's because the industry is so hot. Whether it's because of COVID or e-commerce in general, or the perfect timing. To me, it was just like such a higher level. If you would have gone to the previous ones, you would have enjoyed it, but you wouldn't have been like, wow, well, this is cool. Like industry show. I learned some things. This is like it's just sheer magnet,
I was blown away.
To larger. Yeah. Like if you come to this the first one, you're like, oh, all the other ones are probably amazing. They were in their own right, right?
Yeah.
But compared
for
to
the
new world, for the new world order, I think Emerald, the company that they ran, they did a good job. 2 months before, they didn't think it was going to happen. They were begging people to come. So hopefully, the timing seemed to work out. Hopefully that will last as far as shows in the world. But I was just blown away by the
I'm pretty sure it's gonna last. Like we booked our booth for next year, and like everything was already snapped up. Like there.
Oh yeah, I saw. Yeah. I saw the plan, and I saw that you did, which is great. And I think they're gonna make it even in a bigger room. No, I'm pretty sure it will. I'm just with all this crazy pandemic volatility. Hopefully things will be less, because that felt like this pocket of real life amidst the havoc. And it was just like a little surreal. So I loved it. I was like super like impressed and like humbled. And I think it was like amazing.
Couldn't agree more. So before I actually let you go now,
okay,
can't let you leave without actually giving GETIDA a little bit of a plug and how someone who might want to get in touch with.
No, I'm just here to add value. We don't sell. We just add value. And
well,
no, I appreciate it. No, that's what I do. That's what
GETIDA adds value.
Exactly. That's why it's an easy sell too. Yeah. So thank you. So high level. I told you I built an auditing software back in the day, and I knew there was leaks and holes. Again, Amazon's pretty good, but even if they're a few percentage off, that's a lot of money. Especially if you're selling a lot, especially if your margin's low, which ours was. So just the reimbursement impact of these guys, GETIDA, on my company was almost, you're a numbers guy. It was like almost like a 16% increase in margin.
Wow.
Because it goes straight to the bottom line. So if they find me, 50, 60, 70 grand a month, or 5 to 6 or 700K a year on a $34 million business, that's the number. So based on our margins, like, meaning if I didn't have them doing it, or I tried to do it in-house, like it would have been somewhat okay. But like, again, we just charge for what we find, nothing else. You could do it on your own. We could supplement, we could back up, we do it at a high level. We have like a team of over 50, development and sales and marketing in the States, and a lot of people in the Philippines, similar to you, that do a lot of case management. They're ex-case managers. So we're a solution. There's the software and the magic there, and then the actual service. Because of those two things, our success rate's very high, our product quality is very high. And because of that, we're growing very quickly. And as I told you at the show, like most people don't know, as you said, that this exists. So it's very easy to tell you, hey, do you want free money?
Yeah.
Like we'll get it for you. And we're in the App Store and we're approved, and like all the reasons why it's okay. We're starting to talk to much bigger companies, like I mentioned to you, like Fortune 100 companies. Like, can we do this? Is it like legit? Blah blah blah. And of course it is, but it's just exciting. So anyone who wants like a consultation or a assessment, we can do that for free and show you. And it's just really fun because, to your point, where I'm trying to add value to sellers because they're making more money in a hands-off way. It's pretty great. And I'm trying to do it at a very high, sophisticated level, and at the same time create awareness to the world that this is like important, and you don't really have to do anything. So I'm trying to make the easy sale more, the concept
accessible,
more aware to everybody, accessible and aware to everybody, from the biggest brands to the little guys, because we don't discriminate. We have guys doing 500 million and guys doing $500 a year. It doesn't matter. It's your money regardless. It's a shame not to get it. And it's ethical, just to finish, it's like a real moral responsibility for us. So there's different kind of solutions or tools or hacks or providers, but I view it like we have to do the best job for you because you're trusting me to get everything. So we're not just going to be a sheet or a tool and then you do it. We're going to do the whole thing for you as best as we can. And it's not about the rate. Obviously, we have fair rates to your point. It's pay per success, and we can negotiate if needed. But like the point is, we're getting more back for doing it at a high level, and that's the value. Most of our quote unquote competition, again, it's better to use them than nobody. And I don't like the bash competition. Everyone does their own thing and they do, it okay. But our typical challenge is that the way they compete is by lowballing on the rate, right? I'll do it for this percent or that percent. Like that's cool. Sorry, that's not that cool because you can't value sell, right? You can't say, oh, we're better or we do that. So we try to value sell and explain. It doesn't matter about the rate. Obviously, we'll try to work with you, but we want to show you that we add value, right? Similar to what you do probably with a lot of these VAs and people. Like I can have a better rate. I could charge you X an hour, but you're just not going to get the same output. So if you pay us this, I'll give you a guy who's a machine and you'll thank me for it long term, right? It's very hard to explain that to sellers who are like very short-sighted and they think they know everything about margin. But when you really get to open them up a bit, which is hard at scale, and I could have this conversation with them, it usually works out.
Yeah,
that's what we do.
And it's the same thing. I would say, if you look at a broker or an investment bank, a lot of people look at I don't want to give up that 10%. I don't want to give up that 5%, whatever the percentage is that the investment bank or the broker will take. But the reality is, what they're going to do as a professional in the space like you guys are is yield a much larger return. So that small nominal fee that you're paying is going to have lasting impact, and you're not going to have to do the work that you would have otherwise had to figure out yourself. Right. And, I know what it is to open cases, and that shit is stressful. No one wants to deal with it. I mean, you guys, it's funny. You said you can't handle the stress. You're literally dealing with a thing that is the bane of most people's existence.
Yeah, that's the point. Like we kind of make it easier for them. But to your point, like you should outsource the things that you don't need to, let's say, be experts in. We have a company that's really, really large, and like they know they can get whatever percent back. They kind of just write it off. And after a lot of work, they chose us to work with them. And he's like, I could do it in house. I could probably scale it. There's no way I'm going to do as good a job because you're dealing with thousands of sellers, and I'm just me. So even if I pay you X, it's worth it. And he totally got it. Your initial response is, I don't want to pay you for X. And again, we just pay for success. But I could show. I'm trying. I mean, I can show, but I have to do a better job at marketing and messaging. But I could show you, even if you did it in house, with however skilled you are, even with our fee, we'll still do better. Like almost every time. But as you know, it's not always easy to show someone that, or because it gets emotional, or it involves like, perhaps firing someone. So it's a little dicey. But fundamentally, like this is all we do. We don't do brand content. We don't do all these other things. We just do this. And to our point before about staying in your lane, like we just do this. It's enough to last a lifetime. And it's really deep because every day the reports change. Every day Amazon changes the game and we're on it. So a lot of these other providers, like, they're working on rules from 7 years ago. It still kind of works, but I don't think that's a service to the sellers by not, always being on your game. So that's like my approach with this.
Yeah, and I agree. Like I said, easiest solution for me, the history to sell, and we always speak to our clients and see if we can get them in because they've got nothing to lose. But Eytan, thank you so much for jumping on, taking the time. Really just appreciate your time. I've loved the conversation. For the first time in a while, it's been very much around the challenges and the things that don't always go to plan. And again, like I hope that more people are open to having these conversations because these are the areas where you learn and grow and evolve and develop. And this is the real stuff. So thank you for your candor.
Me too. Thank you for having me. Thanks for the conversation. I appreciate it.